So these vile scumbags arrive in the middle of the night, impersonating police officers, dressed exactly like police officers, using the same weaponry as police officers. This is extremely sinister, and you have to be forgiven for putting two and two together in terms of, are these disgraceful acts of violence being accommodated on a broader spectrum? Is this part of a slow strategy to remove and replace a certain race of people in South Africa? So remember last week when I covered the story of Minnie Malema having an absolute meltdown because Dricus du Plessis wanted to help raise funds for African students who weren't able to fund their master's degree or their bachelor's degree. So he went out there, he made an appearance during this fundraiser. So this guy had an absolute meltdown. Of course, ad hominem attacks started talking about Dricus du Plessis being the most racist person on the planet and that he should go back to Europe because he wasn't African and all that sort of stuff. So we covered that. If you actually pop over to his Twitter account, you see he's actually quoting Vladimir Lenin. The proletariat cannot achieve complete liberty until it has won complete liberty of women. Vladimir Lenin. The dude is responsible for like 100 million deaths during the Russian Revolution and the Bolshevik takeover, and it's predictable. It's the Communist Manifesto is what these boys are running on. So that was that. I covered the story. Really good feedback from people in South Africa about highlighting what Dricus was doing and about what's actually happening over there in terms of farm murders. Huge selection of negative comments, some of which that I'm going to pull up in a minute, that are diametrically opposed to what normal people would think or what normal people could intake in terms of information coming out of South Africa. And it's not just the fact that Dricus du Plessis is the UFC middleweight champion of the world and he just so happens to be from South Africa that I'm taking interest in this particular subject. This is something that I've been keeping a close eye on since about 2015, 2016, thereabouts, when the great Stefan Molyneux covered the truth of South Africa. An unbelievable video. It's out there if you look for it, but as you know, he's gotten cancelled and these videos have been eradicated from the internet. He did the truth about Nelson Mandela. He did the truth about apartheid. These were 2-hour in-depth analysis of what was actually happening in South Africa. This was 10, 11 years ago possibly. So it's not the fact that Donald Trump restricted aid going to South Africa that has highlighted this story for me. This is something that I've been looking at very closely, and especially in terms of correlations for what's happening here in Ireland. Obviously not to the same extreme as what's happening in South Africa, but we will get there and it will be a slow colonization. That was the plan all along. One of the biggest news stories coming out of South Africa in the last couple of days was the Human Rights Day celebration by the EFF.
Shoot to kill Yamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa.
You would imagine that human rights would apply to everybody in democracy or under this utopian communist regime that they're running over there, but clearly not to the likes of Julius Malema. He got up and he proceeded to sing the song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer. He did the whole shtick again on Human Rights Day, totally spitting in the face of democracy, totally going against what they purport in terms of national media or what they try to project as South Africa being a democratic country with democratically elected people. And huge pushback across the internet and in terms of independent media pushing back on how vile and disgusting this act was on Human Rights Day. Absolute radio silence from the president of South Africa and absolute radio silence from every ANC member, of course, and that's predictable. The South African are reporting as of last night another gruesome farm murder reported in Free State. 3 armed men who impersonated police officers allegedly stormed a farm residence in Taba in Chu, Free State, and a 30-year-old man lost his life. The details of this story are, as you'd expect, horrific and extremely common. The suspects forcibly entered the residence by breaking down the door and locked a female and another fellow employee into a room. They confronted the 30-year-old deceased, demanding information about missing sheep, whilst assaulting him with fists and an iron tread puller. At approximately 5 a.m, the female managed to escape the room that she was locked in to discover the victim's body face down with injuries and bruises to the head and body. The police were called to the scene and now there's an open investigation. A manhunt was immediately launched for the armed suspects. No arrests were made yet. Hearing thousands of stories just like this one over the last couple of years is extremely disturbing and terrifying. I can only imagine what these farmers and their families are going through in terms of going to bed in the evening time. You know, putting the kids to bed, yourself and your wife are in bed, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if your wife is going to be widowed or whether your kids are going to have no father. It's absolutely terrifying, and hearing the stories throughout the years, and most people see the documentaries, the Katie Hopkins, Lauren Southern, Ross Kemp. There's numerous documentaries out there with testimonies from people who have lost loved ones to these insane, disgusting crimes. And still people come after you and say that there's no such thing, this is not happening. And that's a huge number of people that actually believe that, especially going on the comment sections and just seeing social media. And you're kind of wondering how much of this is just natural inclination to acclimate with your own people and bolster that sort of an argument, and how much is perpetuated by propagandized media. So these vile scumbags arrive in the middle of the night impersonating police officers, dressed exactly like police officers, using the same weaponry as police officers. This is extremely sinister, and you have to be forgiven for putting two and two together in terms of, is this orchestrated? You have to ask them questions. How easy is it to acquire police weaponry and police uniforms? Are these disgraceful acts of violence being accommodated on a broader spectrum? Is this part of a slow strategy to remove and replace a certain race of people in South Africa? You have to ask them questions, especially when you see things like this. 5 years ago, I didn't know what a signal jammer was. Now these military devices are used to execute attacks on only white farmers in South Africa. These devices block all mobile signals, which give them time to do heinous, disgusting acts to people. They cost about 20k. Which makes me wonder, where did they get them from? And you see these pictures here. I know that the mainstream have come out and tried to debunk these pictures, but again, it gets corroborated over and over again. 36-year-old man arrested for kidnapping and robbing 2 American citizens on holiday in South Africa near Kruger Park. The FBI assisted local police and tracked down one suspect. Military-grade signal jammers were also used in the kidnapping. And there you can see it. How terrifying is that as a white farmer, knowing that at any given minute during the night, your family can be accosted by all accounts, people wearing police uniforms, police weaponry with signal jammers. So it becomes more impossible to even reach out for help. You can't even reach out to your neighbours because they're probably the people that will actually come to your aid more so than the actual police. So this seems like one big complicit act against white farmers. The only person you can lean on are your neighbours in the middle of the night, and you can't even reach them because of this military grade equipment. Really scary stuff. Here are some of the comments that I got in my last video talking about Dricus du Plessis. We'll fly through them really quick. It gives you a good perspective in terms of how much of a great job is done by gaslighting the people of South Africa. Or is this just inherent acclamation to your own kind, or just inherent racism towards white people? You white nationalists are a lot. Why don't you let the racism go? What productive things does it serve? No white people are being killed in South Africa. Stop being a liar, champ. Delusional white people. It's not your land. Go home. White people in South Africa are so fortunate that black South Africans are still tolerating them after what they did to black South Africans during apartheid. They were supposed to be punished harshly. Alright. Why is it that the whites refuse to give back the land to the indigenous people? There are no stats to back up any of these claims. Dricus is not a proud South African, but a divisive figure who's working against the unity we spent years trying to build. Alright, the unity that was built on Human Rights Day, was it? This video was clearly made by a white guy in support of apartheid. That's a sample of some of the comments that came in on my last video talking about Dricus du Plessis, doing a little bit of fundraising for black South Africans who want to be educated. You expect them to maybe say thank you, but absolutely not. We go down the route of go back to Europe and all that sort of stuff. The White Cross Monument in South Africa, 3,000 white crosses representing the victims of farm murders. Over 95% of farm attacks and murders in South Africa, which overwhelmingly target whites, go unsolved. The murder rate in South Africa for farmers is 150 per 100,000, compared to the global rate of 5.6 per 100,000. This rate is higher than any other country in the world, and it means you are more likely to be killed as a white farmer in South Africa than you would be fighting as a soldier at the peak of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Brilliant post there by the great Keith Woods, and very poignant in terms of an Irishman highlighting what's happening in South Africa. And I do think that there is a correlation there to be made, because what we're experiencing here, as I said, is like a slow, lethargic colonization. Here we have the former Prime Minister of Ireland openly talking about his disdain towards white people and what he would like to see happen to the white people of Ireland. And again, remember, this is the leader of Ireland who was a half Indian guy and also spent his weekends licking the mouth off young men in pubs, and now is talking out about Conor McGregor wanting the best for Irish people. Can you imagine the hypocrisy there? Crazy. Have a listen.
One thing I strongly agree with the Deputy on is the need to set a target to have a number of people from ethnic minorities in areas of the public service. We have a health service that's very diverse, although less so as you go up towards the senior positions, not so much in the Gardaí, not so much in the Defence Forces, not so much in the education sector, as the Deputy mentioned, not at all in the civil service, which is very white. including the Department of Equality, for example, and that actually needs to change. So we need to have, I think, a target for people who come from ethnic minority backgrounds, but also dedicated recruitment campaigns to encourage people, because we do need a generation of young people growing up in Ireland who are people of colour to see black and brown school principals, judges, Keen Corla perhaps in the future. Who knows? Visibility and opportunity is really important.
Ireland is very white, and that needs to change, and it has changed. There are certain cities that are now in the minority in terms of Irish Indigenous people. The replacement of Irish people has been highlighted massively in the media, not just by Conor McGregor on St. Patrick's Day.
I don't, at this point, care if you're not allowed to notice it or if you're racist to notice it. It's happening in Ireland. Ireland was never a colonial power, but Ireland never did anything to anybody. Ireland was oppressed by Great Britain, actually. Right. It was never a colonial power. It sat out an entire
there are
world
actual
war.
movies about it.
No,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They suffered a potato famine, so why are you doing this to the Irish? They are the indigenous population of their island. And you're watching them die and replacing them with people from the third world. On what basis are you doing that, George Soros? Actually, like, what's the real answer?
Tucker Carlson highlighting the fact that the Irish people are being replaced, and we will be a minority come 2050. 25 years time from now, Ireland will be filled with sub-Saharan Africans pretending to be Irish and talking about how Ireland has always been black. It's bizarre. There's articles out there from leading academics here who talk about the indigenous people of Ireland were never white, actually they were brown people. Okay, cool.
Yo, do any Irish people actually live in Dublin?
These are the same questions that I ask myself every time I walk around one of the major cities here in Ireland: Cork, Dublin, Limerick, Waterford. Is this Ireland, or am I living in Nigeria or Eritrea or somewhere like that? Again, we have Martha Maid here on Tucker Carlson highlighting the Irish plight.
The Irish people, Ireland is on track to be minority Irish by like 2070. And you say, okay, hang on, like, A, they never colonized anybody. B, they were colonized and like got the really nasty end of that a lot of the time, suffered a lot. They fought for hundreds of years against brutal British attempts to try to bring them into the British fold and squash that uniqueness, that they had out there. The British couldn't do it. And the British for a while there could do damn near anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And
they spent a lot of time trying to oppress Ireland, a lot.
Yeah. And it was not only that, it was a chief priority for a long time.
Yeah, bring it to heel.
800 years of oppression by the British that couldn't crush the uniqueness of the Irish people. But in a very short period of time, we've seen the Irish politicians and the government as a whole, aided by European Union and outside influences, crush the uniqueness, and now the majority of Irish people will absolutely attack you if you say that Ireland is being replaced. I think that's why it's such a priority to highlight what's going on in Ireland for myself in terms of the replacement, and also keep dipping into what's going on and highlighting what's going on over in South Africa. Let me know your thoughts down below if any of that made sense. If you want to support the channel, you can maybe become a member or jump over to my Patreon. Every little helps. Keeps the show on the road, keeps the old blood pumping, and we can keep calling out this absolute and utter disgusting craziness that's afflicting all of us. Cheers.